So joining us is Richard Fowler via satellite. He's a Democratic political strategist. He's in our D.C. bureau. Richard, good to see you back this morning. You've joined us several times. We love having you on the program.
It's good to see you too, Harris.
Let's deal with the birth certificate first. Now, again, I want to caution everybody, we don't know exactly what the president's going to say or do. Your immediate thoughts, that he's even going to broach the subject?
Well, I'm not even sure why the president's discussing this. It's pretty clear that he's born in America. I mean, if the Hillary Clinton campaign couldn't find out that he wasn't born in America, I think this issue is long overdue. I think it's one thing that I think is good about it is that we're bringing some closure to this birther issue. But it's very clear the president's born in America. I'm happy that he's an American citizen like the rest of us, and I want him to get back to doing the work of the American people.
I think the crazy question is, why hasn't he done, if this is so easy, why hasn't he done it a year ago? I mean, these questions have been around for a very long time. I think it actually says a lot about the traction that Donald Trump has gotten, believe it or not. I mean, Donald has been out there talking about this issue, and it's been dismissed by a lot of Republicans as a complete red herring and so forth, but it's back on the national agenda, and I think the whole thing is odd. Why did it take so long, and what's he going to say that puts it to rest? Do
you think, Liz and Richard, that Donald Trump is a real contender in the race for the White House, potentially? And which ticket would he run on? Would he be a Republican? Can you see the Republicans endorsing him? Or would he be an independent?
Well, I mean, clearly he would go for a Republican nomination. I think it's incredibly far-fetched possibility. But he has made some waves and touched some nerves. And it's not just the birther issue, which I totally agree is just kind of an idiotic issue, I think. What I actually am writing about this week, or intend to write about this week, is that he has really been very pugnacious about China. And I think Americans want to hear that. I think Americans are ready for someone to say, hey, why are we letting them take these jobs away from us? Don't we have any leverage here? And in fact, Donald Trump has said, yes, we do. And I think Americans like that message.
All right, real quickly, Richard, before I get your further thoughts on this, the White House releasing a copy of the long-form Obama birth certificate from the state of Hawaii. Now, I'm wading through some of that blog that was posted, it looks like 6 minutes ago. In 2008, in response to media inquiries, the president's campaign requested his birth certificate from the state of Hawaii. The state sent the campaign that birth certificate, the same legal documentation provided to all Hawaiians as proof of the birth in the state, and the campaign immediately posted it on the internet. Now, I don't know if this is a reissuing today or we've gotten a freshened link to the PDF of the president's long-form birth certificate, but there it is, the whitehouse.gov. If you want to take a look at it yourself, you can go there and view the long-form birth certificate. And then they kind of blog about, I guess, the logistics of the documentation and so on and so forth. But in red, which means on the street, on fire news, as a breaking news anchor, I think I can say that. It's really hot. On red and urgent on the Associated Press, on Reuters, coming into our newsroom now, President Obama is set to address the birth certificate controversy. Not just, now that does smack a little bit of Donald Trump. Richard?
Well, I don't think Donald Trump is a formidable candidate for the Republican Party. But let me tell you, Harris, as an image consultant, Donald Trump running for the Republican nomination is a great thing for us. We're really happy. We hope he does great in Iowa, because what it will show is that the Republican Party is so divided that they can't even get behind a nominee. So even if the Democratic Party, which we do have our issues, we don't have as many issues as the Republican Party does. We've already picked our nominee. There's not really any clear understanding of what the Republican Party is looking for. You have the Tea Party folks, which are looking for one thing. You have the independent folks looking for another. You have the old Republican guard possibly backing Mitt Romney. And Donald Trump in this race shows that the Republican field is still wide open, and it shows that the Republican Party is in a little bit of a disarray.
As it usually is at this point in the election race. I mean, at this point, prior to the last presidential cycle, Hillary Clinton was the absolute victor. Everyone knew it. Barack Obama was a complete outsider. And the Republicans were also divided, but it was certainly not John McCain, who was clearly going to be the candidate at that time. I think that's pretty normal operating procedure. I would grant you that Donald Trump being in the race is peculiar. No question
Richard,
about it.
The last I checked, I thought the game was to win. So what if, just trying to get our mind around Donald Trump and what might be inside his head, if anyone can do that fairly, what if the whole idea here is just to almost unite Republicans? I mean, he jumps into the race. Yeah, maybe everybody can't decide to get behind him, but they can decide, as a party that Obama for sure isn't our guy, and then he pokes a hole so deep that the president comes out and talks about an issue that he hasn't talked about before. Now, it's good strategy then if the game is to win, even if the game isn't to win yourself.
Well, I think you could be right there, but the other end of that coin, or the other side of that coin is that Donald Trump being in this race causes some other issues for the Republican Party, and that Donald Trump is not your typical quintessential Republican. He's given to Democrats.
He's not typical anything.
Very true. He's given to Democrats more than he's given to Republicans. On top of that, I think Donald Trump's ability to calvarize certain members of the Republican Party could cause a split after the primary, and that they won't be able to get behind one particular candidate or toe the line. What we saw, the distinction between this Donald Trump field going into 2012 and the Obama-Hillary Clinton field going into the previous election cycle is that everybody is saying a different message. At least with Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, there weren't as many clear distinctions as you'll find in the Republican Party brand, where the distinctions are all over the place. What makes it so hard to catalyze where they're, how they mobilize their base after the primary contest.
Well, I think that's an interesting thought, but I would say that there's a wide spectrum of Republican thought. I think you're right, but almost all of it is antithetical to what Obama's doing in the White House. So on that, they are pretty well united in terms of cutting spending. There isn't a Republican candidate out there who's not talking about cutting spending and trying to attack our budget deficit in the near term and the long term, which the Obama White House continues to, basically shy away from. I think Republicans are generally for production of domestic oil and gas and energy, and not keen to rein in all of our domestic energy sources in a quest for greener energy. I think that unites them. So I think there are actually some very appealing messages to the American people that unite Republicans. That said, I agree with you. There is a spectrum.
All right, let's talk national security in this country. By the way, we are going to go back to this birth certificate story because the president is expected to speak within the next 30 minutes here on the East Coast. And, of course, we'll bring that to you when it happens. And so we'll get back to that in anticipation that he may be on time. We're not always sure, but we'll see. In the meantime, there's some other breaking news this morning to deal with, and it has to do with the national security team which surrounds the president. Mr. Obama plans to nominate CIA Director Leon Panetta to head the Pentagon, senior Afghanistan General David Petraeus to lead the CIA, Ryan Crocker to be the ambassador to Afghanistan, and Lieutenant General John Allen to succeed Petraeus as commander of coalition forces in Afghanistan. Wow. And the name you don't hear in all of this is the exiting Robert Gates. What kind of a shift do you think this represents, Richard?
I think this is a good shift. I think, no, don't get me wrong, I think Robert Gates has been a great Secretary of State, Gates Secretary of Defense, and he's done a lot for the American people, and he's done a lot for both the Bush administration and the Obama administration. I think putting Leon Panetta in there does a few things. One, not only would Secretary Panetta be a former member of Congress who definitely understands how to work the Hill, but on top of that, he has a lot of government experience. He's worked at the OMB. On top of working at the OMB, he's also been the director of the CIA, so he understands all the spectrums of government you need to be a successful Department of Defense, and also he understands just enough to be able to implement some of President Obama's cuts that he plans on making to the Defense Department. I think it's a step in the right direction. On top of that, I think moving General Petraeus over to the CIA not only brings military on-the-ground experience to the CIA, but he also knows the demands of what's needed on the ground for our troops to be more effective in their mission. So therefore, I think he's a great addition to the CIA. I think it's the right shakeup. I think adding that with Hillary Clinton on the national defense team and national security team will be a great step for the American people.
Yeah, it's starting to look very Clinton-esque, that's for sure. Liz Peek and I were talking about it right before the show. You had a different take on it.
Well, I think it's interesting that perhaps this signals an intention from this White House to put more of our security eggs in the intelligence basket and not the war basket. I mean, now you have our greatest warrior going to the CIA, taking over there and not taking over as Secretary of Defense, the CIA guy, Panetta, an apparatchik, if you will, of the Clinton administration going over to run defense. It seems to me if the White House were sitting there saying, yeah, you know, we need to get out of Iraq, we need to get out of Afghanistan, the American people are tired of war, this isn't, by the way, getting us very far in terms of national security, let's start really filling the coffers of the national security apparatus, putting our best people into that post, and really beef up the ability of the United States to prevent terrorists from attacking us here, as opposed to worrying what they're doing out of Afghanistan.
Now, from the live chat, ATT Nut writes, along with what Liz is saying, it does change the dynamic.
It does. I think it does. I actually think it's great. I mean,
do you think it's a good idea?
Well, here's why. I think that the American people are tired of lives lost in Afghanistan. I was actually going to write a column today. Look at page whatever it is, the New York Times, of the young men and women who are killed today in Afghanistan or killed yesterday. You know, I'm not sure that we know what they're doing there. I don't think it's a successful operation. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal, I think it was today, about Pakistan urging Karzai to side and team up with Russia, with China, with other countries instead of America. You know what? Let them have it. Let's have China involved in Afghanistan. They're the only major power that hasn't lost, you know, blood and treasure there. It's time for them to step into this unholy mess.
All right, Ricky, my friend.
Okay.
And on our website soon, because they're just now updating it, is Leon Panetta a good choice for Secretary of Defense? Yes, no, not sure. You can take our Fox News Live You Decide poll for today. And if it's not up in the next 30 seconds, it will be. They just have to push enter, I'm told. Richard Fowler, I got to let you go, but I have to know your last thoughts on what's going on at the White House today and whether or not you think this will move the distraction, as the White House is putting it now, according to our reporter Steve Centani, will move the distraction of the birth certificate issue off the front page for the president's agenda today.
Well, thanks for having me, Harris. But I think you're right. It will move the distraction away from the president so we can focus on bigger things. And I want to talk about what my colleague said earlier, is that, you know, it's very important. I think this shift at this shift in our national security team, she's right. It makes us more intelligence friendly and less about war, which is exactly what we need going into President Obama's reelect and going into the fact that we need to draw down our troops in Afghanistan, and we need to make it so that we are more securing our borders and not worrying about what's happening outside of that. And so I think this is a step in the right direction, and I'm glad we all know the president's an American citizen, which I knew all along.
Hey, Richard, can I make one last comment?
Go right ahead.
I think this is all geared to taking the spotlight away from Ben Bernanke, and boy, is he irritated.
Whoa, actually, I've got a live chat that ratchets it up a little bit more than that. Chief GMAC writes, and I've long suspected maybe that wasn't his name at birth, Obama willing to talk about the birth certificate now, ... to get away from rising gas prices. Go figure. All right, Richard Fowler, thank you very much. And we'll see you next time. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, do you like the Aflac duck?